Welcome everyone to the November 1st combined City Council pre-council meeting for the City of Joliet. Mayor Bob Oderkirk presiding. We will be given the invocation by Pastor Larry Tyler of the Second Baptist Church, 156 South Joliet Street, and then he will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please allow me to initiate a moment of silence for Bob Hacker, 34 years on Joliet City Council, who passed precisely 1 month ago today. Gracious God, our Father, we thank you for this privilege to invite you into these proceedings. We thank you, Lord, for this council. We thank you, Lord, for the constituents that make up this great city. We pray for your presence, your wisdom. We pray for your direction to be made manifest. We pray for mercy and sensitivity with sensitive issues. We pray, Lord, that the collective good will always be kept in sight, that the great city of Joliet can move forward by your grace and mercy. We ask this in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Let everybody say, Amen. 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 I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Begin with roll call. Mayor Oderkirk.
Here.
Councilman Clement.
Here.
Councilwoman Gavin. She did call to let us know she would not be able to attend. Councilman Guerrero.
Here.
Councilman Hug.
Here.
Councilman Morris.
Here.
Councilman Mudrin.
Here.
Councilwoman Quillman.
Here.
Councilwoman Reardon.
Here.
Before the presentation on the budget this evening, we have a quick presentation with JPD representatives on Operation Disrupt.
Good evening, members of the council. We'd like to share with you a pilot program that we're going to begin very shortly here, referred to as Operation Disrupt. It's a teen suicide program. And here with me, I have Police Officer Chuck Mescalino and Police Officer Michelle Banis to explain the details of this endeavor. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having us. I just want to talk briefly about Operation Disrupt. Like the Chief said, it's a program we're going to be starting very soon in Joliet for teen suicide prevention. It's a practical, easy to implement, and inexpensive program to disrupt suicide attempts by teens and young adults in public places. It was developed by a Naperville Park District police officer, Tom Ronsky, and a doctor at Linden Oaks Behavioral Health. It's not really a mental health program, but a positive step that we can implement immediately for very little cost. We got some signs printed up. We're gonna get them set up at certain places where we think these teens might be doing this to try to prevent it. We're gonna set up patrols to get these kids some help. The components are, we're gonna identify locations where suicides have occurred or fit the profile of places where they could possibly occur. We're gonna assign patrols to focus and give extra attention to these certain locations. We're gonna provide the officers with instructions and specific protocols on what to do in the moment when they encounter an individual who exhibits signs of potentially committing suicide. Lastly, we're gonna publicize the program to civilian agencies, schools, media. We're gonna make sure that people who are contemplating suicide know that parks and public places are being patrolled specifically to disrupt suicide attempts. Like I said, I've already talked to Joliet West and Joliet Central representatives who stated we can get the signs up on their properties. I'm gonna reach out to the Plainfield superintendent, since we have probably about a dozen or so Plainfield schools in our town, about getting these signs up there.
And we're not gonna plaster the signs like everywhere, but we are it's gonna have an informational phone number on there where they could call for a suicide line if they need it. And they did the study. They said that it usually occurs Monday through Thursday from 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. So that's when we'll up our patrol over there and just be on the lookout for the signs of suicide children in that area.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I'm just curious with Naperville, is there any feedback on how many people have been helped by this or use this program?
He said at least one, he knows for sure. He said that he suspects others because they were, in the area and they came in, a police officer started talking to them and, disrupted their mindset. That's the whole point of it. But he said that for sure one feedback that it did. So we figure if it saves one, it's really cheap. I think it's between like $200 and $300 for these signs, and that's really the overhead cost.
Excuse me, ma'am?
Yes,
Yeah, Chuck, other agencies that have this
I'm sorry,
program.
yes, thank you. Will County Forest Reserve is already doing it. Obviously, Naperville Park District is already doing it. The chief mentioned one other, DNR is also getting on board with this. We plan on reaching out to some of the other local adjoining cities to try to spread it around to them.
Are you doing any coordinating with the fire department with the Thrive program that we have, that we, put into place on Essington Road? Do you know what I'm talking about? The counselors and,
I'll reach out to Chief Kerry about that.
yeah.
He was here at the meeting.
Oh, okay, sorry, I wasn't here.
No, they were here at Public Safety this evening, and they came about this, and I asked them to stay and come and speak to the council about it, so they know what's going on if they see these signs. Operation Disrupt is very, very important, and I know the chief of the police were very much in support of this. They did it a little while ago, and something new, and we have something else coming up down the road, so this is a great project to start and very little cost.
Yep.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
thank you guys for staying, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the presentation of the city manager's proposed 2023 annual budget and discussion to set a public hearing date for proposed 2023 budget.
Thank you, council. This is the budget that we have prepared right now. Well, before we get started, I'd like to talk about an issue that popped up. I know that I promised you the budget earlier this year. That didn't happen. That's on me. And as a result of that, one of the issues that we had was, as many of you know, we got our autos canceled for the squad cars this year. We were able to, by struggling, we were, jumping all around trying to get these orders replaced. I sent you all an email, so I just want to go back over this again real quick. To get the additional budgeted cars, which would be 25, the budget hasn't passed yet, so I'm asking for emergency authority to be able to commit to buying those. And the reason for that is I had to beg, they called up Friday and said, hey, we need a commitment from the city. And I was like, I haven't talked to the council yet, so I begged them. I said, could you please at least give me till Wednesday to run it by the council, so that we'd be able to buy these, commit to getting these squad cars. So, they agreed to give me till tomorrow, to whether or not we can commit to that. So, and it's gonna be a mix. There's not gonna be, we always use Ford, but we're gonna get some Chevy Durangos. They're all American made. So, that's keeping in with the spirit of the city of buying, American.
Chevy or Durango?
I thought we were getting done.
Dodge Durango, right, Dodge Durango, I'm sorry. It's
Okay.
Dodge Durango, and we're getting some Ford. So it'll still be a mix, but there'll be, I think, 35 Durangos.
I don't know if you want to say it out loud, but I'd like to know who we're talking to and that.
Oh, that was, it was Greg has some of the information
Actually, this was discussed at Public Safety, but Jeff Price was here talking about the vehicles.
Right.
He was also at Public Service, so we were gonna bring that up at an extended, Councilman Hug was gonna go into all the details about, because he'd already
okay,
been through the
perfect.
whole thing, so that we could discuss it and have a little more information about what's going
All right.
on with the vehicles and why we have to do
All
it
right,
this way.
perfect. Again, I apologize on that. The budget had been passed earlier. This would not have been an issue, so that's on me. So,
We'd asked Jeff to stay, but he couldn't stay today, so to explain the whole thing.
and we're not the only municipality that is struggling with this. We have a laundry list. I know that Greg Ruddy has a laundry list as well, ready to talk about this a little bit more in detail. They've canceled cars for the state police. Naperville is struggling, so they got theirs canceled as well. Ford Motor Company's canceled this and then now jacked up the prices. So, we're kind of stuck, so, which is unfortunate.
Is this a local dealer?
we're just trying to get them from anywhere. I don't know where, I don't actually know whether we just call, we called up a broker and said, hey, could you help us out? We need some squad cars. Because we weren't even sure that Ford was gonna give us any cars this year at all anyway. So, you know, we were going around trying to get all the information we possibly could. So, at any rate. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to, you know, this is not the way I want to do business, naturally. But we'll turn this over to Mr. Gadati at this point and have him go over the rest of the budget. So thank you for your patience in this.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we are presenting the city manager's proposed budget. Our first 3 pages, I know these are very small printing and very busy, but the first page is revenues, every single fund. What I'd like to point out is that the city of Joliet budgets every fund. There is no fund that is not in the budget. We present every fund, every line item, every division. We give 2 years. This year it's 2021 of actual. And the current budget is what the budget was originally adopted last year. We estimated the year end. We got requests from the city departments, and the city manager vetted it and made his recommendation. So the first page are the revenues. The second page, expenditures, and I have supplied you with a hard copy of this, and I know the screens are kind of hard to read. And this would be our fund balance or our net position for all of our funds. Fund balance is funds that use the modified accrual basis of accounting, and net position are funds that use the accrual basis of accounting. The big difference is that accrual basis of accounting post depreciation rather than purchases. So I have extracted the revenue and the expenditures for 2023. The total city manager's recommended expenditures for all funds is $572 million. The total revenue is $449,000. I know that seems like a big difference, but you'll see some of the revenue was received this year. And you'll see that in the presentation, how some funds, they received the money this year and we're gonna expend it in future years. So the question, a good example is the Capital Projects Fund. We put that money in the Capital Projects Fund as passed by council, and it cannot be changed without the city council changing what's in the Capital Projects Fund. You can, so that money may go in there this year or next year, but sometimes it has to be reappropriated because we simply could not get to those capital projects. The general fund is recommended $231.5 million in revenue, $231.3 million in expenditures. So the recommendation is to add a little bit over $200,000 to the fund balance. The water and sewer fund, we're recommending a little bit more expenditures than revenues. Something that is in this year's budget is the alternative water supply for the commission that's been formed, $30.4 million. The water main replacement program, $59.2 million, and the alternative water supply for Joliet only at $9.6 million. The fund does recommend $21.2 million in capital expenditures for the water and sewer fund that will be paid out of current reserves. The parking fund, as you know, we've had trouble balancing this. It looks like we are gonna have revenues about $740,000, $1.5 million in expenditures. Looks like $765,000 is more expenditures than operating revenue. At the current time, the recommendation is to operate this fund as is, but I would suspect that we're gonna have to deliberate on the parking fund. We do have a study that's ongoing right now. As soon as that study's done, we can revisit the parking fund with the council. The general fund, this is, activities are police and fire, planning, economic development, engineering, code enforcement, garbage, legal, financial, and general administration. The water fund, we have 3 wastewater treatment plants, 594 miles of combined and sewers, 26 wells, 11 water treatment plants, 669 miles of water main, 8,555 fire hydrants, and 38 lift stations. Quite an extensive water and sewer system. The parking fund, supports 1 parking deck. As you know, we sold the other parking deck. 7 parking lots, 412 on-street meters, 19 pay stations, and 700 on-street parking spaces. Operating budget for the 3 operating funds are recommended $303 million for the 3 of them. That's about a 9.36 increase from 2022 budget. In the general fund, as mentioned earlier, $231 million is estimated in revenues. That's a 6.91% increase over the 2022 budget. It includes a 4.9% increase in the property tax levy. The levy for the library operations is requested to be $6.1 million, a 2% increase over the 2022 levy. The 2022 levy was $6.024 million. This recommendation includes funding for 13 new full-time positions and 1 part-time position. We had several favorable things happen to us. The police pension contribution went down $1.4 million. The fire pension went down $1.8 million, and the IMRF pension contributions went down about $147,000. The IMRF rate went from 15.03 to 12.37. Current data for 2023, we're gonna have trouble with the pension funds. We've lost quite a bit of money because of the market. So 2024, I fully expect that we will have an increase in the pension contributions. I will point out that the police and pension funds are funded by a levy through the tax, so that is set. But the IMRF rate is a rate that's based on a person's salary. So that's why you may see a lower increase in the IMRF. That's because we added some people who would be in the IMRF fund. This budget allocates funding for the city-wide comprehensive plan, continued support for the museum at $200,000, the Will County Courthouse at $500,000, and the Rialto Theater at $375,000. The general fund includes overtime in the fire department, $2.2 million. Settlements are set at $1 million. That's very difficult to predict. It depends on how much the courts rule against us or we settle. Capital projects, we had 47.58 requests for the capital projects fund. An amount of $31.44 million is recommended. The larger projects are $7.7 million for roads, $2.1 million for 25 police vehicles, which the city manager mentioned earlier, $6.1 million for the Chicago Street Plaza, $3 million of which we got a grant for, $710,000 for building improvements, $4.14 million for the downtown flood levy. That is a very preliminary estimate right now. $200,000 for the city council chamber upgrades, which was requested quite coincidentally last meeting by one of the council people. And $1.5 .52 million to renovate our underground storage tanks. We have one on Cass Street and one on the west side, and $1.75 million for fire vehicles. Your printed budget on page 194 and 195 contains a complete list of the capital projects recommended. The Vehicle Replacement Fund was established in 2020. An amount of $2.19 million for 29 new vehicles is recommended. You can see the complete list on page 197. Again, this is a capital projects fund. We collect the gas tax at 3 cents, put it in the Vehicle Replacement Fund, and it cannot be used for anything else other than vehicles unless we come back to council and amend the budget. We've also included $211,000 for Union Station, $479,000 for the Gateway Center, $372,000 for the bus station, and $211,000 for the prison. An amount of $23 million is budgeted in the motor fuel tax fund for road improvements. Again, that's money that comes from the state, and we put in the budget the projects that we're gonna do. And again, this money cannot be used for anything other than roads unless the council amends the budget. Again, in the capital projects fund, we have $6.15 million for resurfacing and $1.2 million for Chicago Streetscape and the plaza. Now, the Chicago Street has 3 different projects. One is the street itself, one is the streetscape, which are the decorative lights and the road, and then there's the plaza. Again, the plaza, we got $3 million for renovating that. There is money in this budget to hire someone to come before council and give us a recommendation of what we want the plaza to look like. As you know, we had a presentation a few years ago. It's kind of old, and I think we should revisit that as we start rebuilding Chicago Street.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, we're looking at making that a historic district. So by doing so, there's certain restrictions on what we can and cannot do. So a lot of those things that we have to do to make it preservation for the historic commission or the landmark, whatever they want to call it, it's going to cost a lot more money. But are there extra funds or grants for a city to help revitalize their downtown if they make it a historic district? There's a lot of restrictions.
There's not in this budget, but we do have a grant administrator, and she will be more than happy to look at that. We are always looking for grant and opportunities to have someone else pay for what we need to do. It's
Right,
always
but
good.
I didn't know, if we've looked at before a historic district and then after historic district, because
That
there's
has
a
not
huge
been
amount
looked
of
at yet.
cost.
That has not been looked at yet.
Okay.
And that's why we are recommending hiring a consultant, so they can come in and we can revisit what the plaza looks like. I think it was quite a bit ago when we
It was very
had that
modern,
presentation.
actually.
Yes,
Didn't
yes.
go with the decor at all.
And so if we do make it a historic, I believe the streetscape would fit the historic tenure that we're looking for, but the plaza, we'd have to take that into consideration when we hire a consultant. We'll make sure that we put that in the RFQ for a consultant.
Thank you.
Again, we're recommending a 4.9% increase in the property tax. We budgeted gaming revenue at a 5% increase from the 2021 amount. I will say that the 2022 is trending about that, at about 5% increase. Of course, they're still getting back from the COVID. I don't think they'll ever get back to the 36 million we got years ago, so. And the garbage collection fee is set to go up 1%. We've already passed that based on what the garbage collection contract says with Waste Management.
Jim, if you can go back, I know you said this earlier, but I think you need to be clear. You're not proposing a 4.9% increase in property taxes. It's for the levy, correct?
Yes.
All right, if you can
Yes.
make that clear, please.
Yes, the amount that we levy will go up 4%, but we submit that to the county, and the county gives us the rate. And we suspect that the 4.9% will be covered by growth or new construction. Unfortunately, we haven't got the new EAVs yet for next year. That
Okay.
comes out sometimes in November.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. A lot has been asked about the COVID money, what we got, what we received, where we're at. The top part shows that we received 29 million in total COVID relief. Some of it was, if you go to the top, the CARES Act, two separate CARES Act. Those are basically reimbursements for money that we spent on COVID relief. But then, the American Rescue Plan, we received two amounts, 11 million in 2021 and 11 million in 2022. So what has happened to that? If you go down below, you can see I have 22 million. So the amount that we can use for revenue replacement, that means there was a calculation that the American Rescue Plan gave, which I have done. I have a copy of it at the back of your presentation here, that we can use $14.3 million for almost anything we want. It's revenue replacement. The calculation says we lost that revenue because of COVID, and we can use that revenue. So we have committed to body-worn cameras. That was in last year's budget. 5.2 million for the radios. That was passed earlier this year. And this budget is recommended to use the remainder for roadways and police vehicles. So the amount that's left is $7.9 million. That money can be only used for 4 purposes, and that's at the back of your presentation. Also, I'm sorry about this. Here, the 4 purposes are for a public health emergency. We have already been reimbursed for that. The second would be to respond to, it's for premium pay for eligible workers. We could use it for that. The third item is we could use it for public health emergency relative revenues. That was a portion I described earlier. And the last thing is for investments in water and sewer or broadband. So that 7 million is kind of limited for us, what we can use that money for. Sorry for that. There's a couple things that's not included. We are still in negotiation with the Police Supervisors Association. All other unions are settled, so that's been folded into this budget, and there's no increases for non-union employees. And again, this does not address our retirees' health care liability, which is $725 million. That went down from $752 million last year, but it's quite a big number, as you can tell. So our revenues, 231.5. They're pretty well spread out between different revenue sources. Our largest revenue source is the sales tax, but property tax is very close. Here's a breakdown of the 231 million. You can see that we're estimating sales tax to be about what we're estimating this year to be. Property taxes, we expect to go up a little bit. The license and permits is a little bit down. That's because of North Point. North Point had a large building permit this year, and they also made a $5.7 million contribution to the city. Expenditures, you can see, as with most cities, the police department is our largest, and the fire department. Human resources, it looks high, but you have to remember, all of our healthcare is charged to the Human Resources Department and the Department of Finance. All of our garbage payments are in the Finance Department. It's easy to see that we're in the business of service, so 72.6% of our expenditures are for payroll and benefits. Here's a breakdown again of our payroll, our benefits. We expect the payroll to go down, and that's because in 2022, we settled all of our contracts and had to make some retroactive pays. And the benefits are going up. We'll get to that when we get to the human resources, and pretty much everything else is pretty even. As I said earlier, every department, every line item we have accomplishments, performance objectives, charts, graphs. We did get the Distinguished Budget Award for the 2022 budget. That was the 6th time. We project the undesignated fund balance, if it would pass as presented, to be $60.8 million or 29.75% of operating expenditures. Our goal is to have 20%. So I believe that's a sufficient fund balance. Now to go to the departments, hospitalization, well, we put in an 18.5% increase. We have been told by our providers to expect an 11% increase, but with the employees that are added, we estimate that the healthcare will be about 32 million. About 45% of that is for retirees. Our property and liability insurance is out the roof, as our Human Resources Director said. In 2021, we paid $600,000. We expect liability insurance to be 1.6 million. And workers' comp is budgeted at 3.2 million. It was about 2.9 last year, so a small increase in that. And the Community Development Department, the recommendation includes 5 new employees, 2 clerk typists, a billing clerk, a residential property inspector, and an apprentice operating engineer. Most of these employees are recommended so we can get the residential rental program off the ground. In their budget is, again, the Rialto Theater, the museum, the Chamber of Commerce, Will County CED, the Title 20 program, the courthouse, and the Pace Route 511. And again, we expect to have the citywide comprehensive plan done next year. Again, tax rebates are $850,000. That's rebates that we've agreed through development agreements to pay. It's in their budget to park it there. Again, the Bicentennial Park, Gateway Center, the prison, the Union Station, and the bus station are all in their budget. This is the 2nd year of the Economic Development Division. And again, single-family residential inspection program is budgeted for 2023. The city clerk's office, we expect, this is a carryover from 2022 to go to ContentVerse, document management system, and it includes a part-time office assistant. The city manager has some equipment for Channel 6. This year, it includes a emergency management administrator, which we added this year, and an emergency management division, and it also includes funding for a quarterly newsletter. Legal, again, professional and contractual services, 1.4 million, legal claims at 1 million. IT, we're recommending 3 new employees, a help desk technician 1, a help desk technician 2, and a data entry clerk. Most of these people were funded out of contractual. The recommendation is to make them full-time employees. The fire department, again, we had a decrease in the pensions. Their overtime is budgeted at 2.2. The recommendation includes 1 additional fire captain, the fire inspector, And again, there's 400,000 to continue support for ThriveWorks. The finance department, we pay for our computer system, about 410,000. There's 250,000 in the ballpark division. And one of our goals next year is to have a fixed asset valuation. We haven't had an appraisal on our fixed asset for way over 10 years. So that's one of our goals for next year. The police also had a decrease in pensions, about 1.5 million. 3.1 million is for overtime. It includes 3 additional positions, 2 FOIA analysts, and that's because of the body worn cameras. We have plenty of redaction to do, and an evidence custodian property manager. In the Public Works Department, we have 400,000 for tree removal and pruning, 800,000 for a tree inventory, 205,000 for tree planting.
Jim,
Yes.
you meant to say 80,000, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Did I say 800?
Yes.
Thank you. Professional services for phase 2 of the downtown floodplain project. That's not the building of the levee, that's the engineering. It includes 1 additional maintenance worker and 300,000 for the sidewalk program. The water and sewer fund is almost 7 million for system revenues. Expenditures at 70 million. It includes 14.5 million in depreciation. Requests for expenditures increased almost 3% from the 68.6 million in 2022. Provides increased maintenance costs for an aging system. 21.18 million in capital improvements, which we will pay for out of reserves. A 6.2 increase is going to be in effect in November 1st, 2022. That was passed by council earlier this year. It includes 10.35 million for infrastructure improvements through IEPA loans. Again, this is the first year, 30.4 million for the alternative water supply program, and that will be for the Grand Prairie Water Commission, and that's funded by bond proceeds. Similar, the alternative water supply program, 9.6 million, and that also is, that's the Joliet portion only, and that is also funded by bond proceeds. And 59.2 million is budgeted for water main, and that will also be funded by bond proceeds. These are 3 new issues. All of them are tied to the alternative water source program. As we gear up, the commission has been formed, and we are working through the accounting right now. And this does include 2 additional positions, a water meter repairman. Right now, we only have 1, and I think we need 2, and a management analyst to help us determine which meters should be replaced. Again, water and sewer fund is an enterprise fund. It's easy to see that 95% of our receipts come from water and sewer charges. Operating expenditures, I've outlined it for each operation, but the one thing that we need to look at is our debt service is our largest expenditure. We're up to $14 million, and that is expected to grow until the alternative water source program gets implemented. Our expenses, 28% is for payroll and benefits, 25% for service, and the rest is for keeping the water and sewer system up and running. Parking fund, about 740,000. We expect a little more based on, the downtown. Expenditures at 1.5 million. That's a decrease. We are trying to get this fund to balance, and operating revenues are about 700,000 less than the expenditures. A parking study will address our future operations, and the deficit will continue. We have a decision to make as a council and administration is our downtown parking. So this is, you can see most of it is parking fees. Miscellaneous revenue basically is interest on fines and forfeits when people get parking tickets. So the expenses, most of it's operations. You can see 1 million of it out of the 1.5 million. And the one fund I'd also like to talk about is TIF Increment Financing Fund number 7. This is called the Rock Run Crossing, better known as the Cullinan Properties. This year, we received $102 million in bond proceeds. And this is a good example. We received the money this year, and we will be expending it in future years. You have approved JP Morgan Chase as the depository for them. They have laddered the investments, mostly, I think all with US Treasury to match the drawdown schedule that we are working with Cullinan Properties for. But I think it's a significant fund, so I thought I would point that out tonight with the operating funds. And with that, that's my presentation. What we need to do is set a public hearing for the budget. The public hearing has to be set to 7. We have to publish 7 to 15 days before the hearing itself. We have always done it 10 days before. So, for example, if you set it for next council meeting or the December meeting, we need to publish in the paper that the public hearing will be held then. With
Okay.
that, I'll take any questions.
Well, why don't we save them for the public hearing? The
Pardon me?
questions, debate, we'll do it the next meeting. Do you want to have a special meeting prior to the public hearing, or do it all together?
I guess I defer to the council if they have a lot of questions. I mean, certainly we can have it's whatever y'all want.
Or put it on the agenda for the next pre-council meeting?
Yeah, put it on the agenda for the next pre-council meeting if that's all right with everybody, and then we can.
Mayor?
Yes.
Because we can't make our changes at the public hearing, otherwise we'd have to have another public hearing.
Right,
Yeah.
agreed.
Mayor.
Yes,
Yeah, Jim, thank you for that presentation. I did not see in there what kind of funds we're putting into the reserve. Is there? on there?
This year, 2022, we expect about 5.7 million, and we have 200,000 for next year.
Thank you.
how about 2 weeks on Monday, and based on that conversation, we'll set a public hearing or not, if you know where to go.
All right, perfect.
So the next Monday night pre-council meeting, we're gonna have a discussion about the budget?
Yes,
Thank you.
that'll work.
It'll be November 14th.
Yes. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks.
Can we meet earlier, like at 4:30? Because I think it'll be a long meeting if we don't. I mean, I don't know if everybody can make it, I'm just
No, that's
putting it out
fine,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. 4:30?
Can everyone make it at 4:30
Well, we have the Public Service Committee meeting always at 4:30.
Oh,
on Monday?
okay. Then we'll I just try and make it short, not so long.
We
But it's
can
gonna
move
be
it
long
back.
anyway, doesn't matter,
We can move it back
to.
to 4, but there's no guarantee we'll be done by 4:30, maybe
All right, well
4:45.
then don't mess it up. It was just a suggestion.
Next on the agenda is a short presentation by the Cullinan Group.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for having this this evening. My name is again Chris West with Cullinan Properties, partner or senior advisor. Just have a brief presentation on the upcoming submittal here as well. Let me see if I got the there we go. The first slide here is just to go ahead, and there's been some misinformation circulating out there in the media relative to some of the facts that are out there. We wanted to make sure that everyone knew here at council that there's never been any bait and switch by Cullinan Properties relative to the quantity of units that are being proposed. The quantity of the 260 units has always been just the first phase of the original approximately 500 to 600 planned units per the April 2020 Joint Review Board meeting. Within that, down below there is, that's when it was presented. Rick Joseph, who's here in attendance this evening as well from Miller Hall and Triggs, our counsel, spoke at the meeting. The video footage there documents when that was presented, and has also been since verified by the city legal department as well. So just go ahead reinforcing that that overall quantity was, that the 260 has been circulating as the total quantity of the project, and that has never been the case. It's always the first phase. However, as part of the questioning of some of the student count quantities, we did reach back out to our third-party consultant, Tracy Cross and Associates, who performed the original market study, and they have acknowledged that they did in fact have an error in the original calculations. They should have had, for the initial 260 units, a quantity of 27 total students versus the 10 that have been circulated that we have been referring to. What we did then, again, to further confirm the quantities, we went ahead and that were in question, we went ahead and cross-referenced them. The Illinois School Consulting Service Guidelines is what was utilized by Tracy Cross and Associates. We cross-referenced that with the city ordinance and confirmed that the two population ratio calculations are virtually identical. And actually, quite honestly, the city ordinance is technically slightly less than the Tracy Cross associate values, which is reflected later in a couple charts that I'll go into. But utilizing both the Illinois School Consulting Service Guidelines and the local city ordinance, the total number of students for the full 570 unit development is calculated at 53 total students, comprised of 27 kindergarten through 5th, 13 6th through 8th, and 13 high school, which again do not begin phasing in until the fall of 24 through the fall of 28. So it's not all coming online today. It's not even coming on all online in 24, but staggered, phased in through the 24 to 28 timeframe. Again, the Illinois School Consulting Service Guidelines is one of the sources widely used regionally among school districts and renowned professionals such as Tracy Cross and also SB Freeman, who is also often used as a third-party consultant by the city. Some of the regional school districts that utilize the student population ratios, in addition to Joliet, include Aurora, Shorewood, Lockport, St. Charles, and Glenview. In addition, SB Freeman, again, city consultant, has noted in the recent public report that in their experience, these guidelines many times generate higher estimates of the students that may actually materialize, which is consistent with our experience that we've at our Cullinan properties. For instance, Cullinan's historical experience of other projects has had less than 5 students per 100 apartment units. And actually, Diane went out and just reconfirmed one of the properties out here in Grand Prairie, one of our projects down in Peoria. Actually, of the 160 units, only has 3 students and 2 infants that are occupying in those 160 units. One of the things that did come in and is reflected in staff's updated report, we did, however, go ahead and look at the possibility of adding a third phase, and that's where the 760 quantity did come into play, and that additional 190 units has been taken out of the project, out of the submittal. We have gone back to our original 29, 30 acres of the 570 units. So you can see the big red X there on the right-hand side. That was at phase 3 that did all of a sudden become a lot of controversy going from the 570 to the 760. These charts, I know they're a little difficult to read relative to the size, but just regurgitates what I said a little bit earlier relative to the Tracy Cross comparison with the city code. The top table reflects the Tracy Cross, which is 55 total students amongst the different categories, versus the city code, city ordinance section 7.4, which has the 53 students. Therefore, again, comparing the 53 to 55 being virtually identical. And then again, based upon the adopted city code, we've also got into a phasing and when those students would come online. And this reflects that phasing, again, between the 2024 and 2028 timeframe. And again, total of 40 for the K through 8, total of 13 for the high school aged categories. Okay, one of the things that's important is that how we market the project and the property and who our demographic is. You know, what we're looking at more, upscale development that's consistent and compatible with our overall mixed-use development. Clubhouse has pool, grill stations, fitness center, pickleball courts, dog parks, business center, gazebo, cabanas. So it's not marketed to families, it's marketed to young professionals, empty nesters, adults without children that'll want to be part of this overall mixed-use development. Just reiterates a little bit here what I was mentioning as far as the amenities. And again, approximately 45% of the proposed residential matrix constitutes studio/efficiencies or one-bedroom units, again, which appeals primarily to the single-person households along with childless couples. And again, the amenities in the clubhouse, fitness room, business center, et cetera, dog parks, and the connectivity to the multi-use path that are out there. One of the things that's been discussed as well has been the density factor. I think there's been, the city of Joliet has gone back and forth with their overall density factor. I think at one point it might have been at 36 units per acre. It's currently at 10 units per acre, unless there's coming back for specific approvals. And the representative projects that we've looked at and is consistent with the product that we're looking to build has projects in Plainfield and Lombard, Hoffman Estates. They're all in that 20, 19, 21, 18 and a half, 22 density of units per acre, which is, again, within our 18.6. Also here, South Elgin, Schaumburg, Bolingbrook have similar densities, anywhere from 18 to 22 densities, which, again, we fall right in that midpoint, that medium of density factors with the product that we're proposing. One of the other items that's come up, and I know a number of elected officials attended a recent meeting, some residents on the adjacent Rock Run Drive, which is adjacent to our property. And, just in response to some of the concerns raised back at the time of the initial groundbreaking, we worked closely with the city of Joliet and Troy Township to eliminate any requirement for any vehicular access to Rock Run Drive, instead providing all the ingress, egress via our Rock Run Crossing Drive out to the west, therefore no vehicular connectivity. We also relocated over 200 mature evergreen trees to the north and east boundaries, creating a buffer, enhancing the privacy for the Rock Run Drive residents, dramatically reducing the current light, noise and light emanating from I-55 activity, improving the overall aesthetics, and also obviously being environmentally conscious by keeping the trees on site. We also designed the residential detention pond, berm, and supplemental landscaping to be located at the east end, which is the closest to the single-family residential, which creates a setback for any buildings that's greater than 180 feet from our rear right-of-way, and over 200 feet when taking into consideration the Rock Run Drive expanse, compared to the traditional code setback of only 25 feet. So almost 8 times that separation distance between the residents and our project. Also, we did have, again, a recent meeting with the Rock Run Drive residents. Appreciated the time that everybody put into attending that meeting and good feedback. We've since agreed to additional items, including additional fencing, supplemental landscaping, and restricting balcony views on the 2-3-story buildings that are closest to their property, where any views will be facing inboard, facing west toward the other central area, courtyard area. So just, I know when the city and Cullinan started working together, it was important that the composite nature of the project, there was some limitations on industrial clearly, but clearly wanted a mixed use, our experience brought to the table, our retail, our commercial, our residential multifamily experience, and that's what's been successful for our projects. And so this is important to the success of the overall project. How the uses interplay with one another between the residential, the multifamily, and our commercial, our theater entertainment, our theaters on the green, the farmers markets, all different things that will be cross-marketed between the two components, the multifamily and the overall mixed-use center. So again, we're committed to building a quality product, and appreciate everyone's support and open it up for any questions.
Any questions?
Sure, I have lots. So I'm gonna discuss it, we'll discuss it right now. Okay, and I was looking at the plans, there's very little green space for all the apartments that you wanna put there. And as I was reading the legislative part of it, our ordinance is 10 units per acre, you want 17 to 18. Extreme overcrowding. Page 3 on the legislative report, our facades are gonna be cheapened down because rather than conform with our current ordinance of 100% in the front and 50% on the sides, you're gonna be less than that, but it doesn't say that, how much you're gonna lessen the front from 100% to what percentage on the front or the side. So there'll be no park or recreation because there's not enough room for it. There's not enough room to place property for a school. There is no theater complex, they're in bankruptcy. All we have now is a casino and a bunch of plans for 560 apartments. So, my question to this city council is, do we want a cheap apartment complex? We've had so many of those in the past. And as I've suggested all along, we need a 55 and older complex. Our citizens in Joliet love Joliet. They don't want to always leave, but they want to retire. But to retire to retirement complexes, and like in Shorewood and Naperville, like you keep bringing up, and Schaumburg, they all have retirement, 55 and older places. We have nothing like that here, so we're losing our senior residents. And having said that, the other alternative, which I've talked to many, many times, and I'm gonna bring it back up again, is an outlet mall. You go north to 88, that outlet mall is packed. You go, the next one is 2 hours away in Indiana. We're at the crossroads here. An outlet mall would be perfect, because if you ask me, when Amazon and all these other department stores start charging for returns because people can't try things on, we're gonna go back to retail. It's just a matter of time. What goes around comes around. But to put 18 units per acre of apartment buildings, 3 stories high, in this prime area is absolutely ridiculous, and it's gonna look so cheap, because you're gonna cut costs here and cut costs there. I don't know where you're gonna put the pool. One pool for all these apartments, really? And there's no place, I've seen everything you've talked about, but when I'm looking at this, you're gonna pay for, instead of having a park, you're gonna pay the park district or pay the city for the land instead of having a park. So where, when these kids are there, where are they gonna play?
Well, that's, Councilwoman Coleman, thank you. I'll try to address a few of the different items there. I guess number one, relative to the percentage of brick, I think that, again, how the code was structured was more of the single building, freestanding, facing a public street. There's really only one public street, which is Rock Run Crossing Drive out there at the far west end. A lot of the other buildings are facing the berm, the trees, interior, toward the casino, other uses. So there's not the same kind of sensitivity. But beyond that, the quality doesn't, just because it's not brick doesn't mean it's not quality. And I think you can look at some of the older 100% brick buildings that are done back in the 70s, 80s here that look outdated and are not necessarily quality, even though they're brick. So like, there's different finishes that create that variety, that texture, that complementary, different materials that help still make it a quality product. So I don't think just because it's not brick 100%, does not mean it's not quality. As far as the parks and the percentage, there are, obviously we have large detention ponds that are not part of the project, that have multi-use paths, that connectivity, bike and pedestrian paths. Again, we have the green space as part of the mixed-use center, some of our courtyard space, but also relative to the parks with the kids, that's not, again, our demographic. That's not what we're targeting. We have pickleball courts. We have the dog parks. We have the other uses that are there that are not geared toward having to cater to the kids. That's not our marketing.
And why is the school district all up in arms and tried? Because they can't handle all those kids, and there's no place for a school there.
Well, again, I think some of the charts kind of speak to.
Since it's a TIF district, they can't charge taxes for 23 years to take care of these kids that are gonna be there.
Again, I think some of the charts speak to what the real quantities are likely to be based upon the guidance and.
Charts always change.
You know, I'm sorry,
Any other questions?
As far as doing almost double the density, and you gave 4 or 6 examples of other communities that for whatever reason decided to do that with a project, okay? Did you also actually go to those school districts and find out, not what the different, did we work with Troy at all to find out what their formula is? And did we find out with the ones you gave an example to bolster a higher density, 17 versus 10? Did you also ask those communities how many students came out of those places? That's not a guess, that would be reality.
Sure. No, to answer your question directly, Councilman Hug, no, did not ask that question to them. That being said, I think there's other projects that are here in the Joliet community that are excellent. Again, your code at one time had 36, went back to 10. I think there's been 2 extremes. I think the 18 is not unacceptable. It's a median and it's an average. And I think there's a lot of product that can demonstrate that that's not over densification of the unit. But again, our experience with our projects has been that the numbers are actually less than what these tables are reflecting.
Mayor, again, in our legislation text on page 3, and I'm going to read this paragraph. Staff views the requested waiver from the city's anti-monotony standards. Now, we put these standards in place so we'd have nice-looking buildings. which will require stone or brick along 100% of the facades in the front and 50% on the side and the rear of each building. As appropriate, really? We want to cheapen this up and make it look terrible because it says they're provided that the proposed building designs shown in the attached elevations are built. The designs display more of a design of a modern style of facade. What's that? Vinyl siding? With varied patterns and materials that would contribute in an aesthetically pleasing design to the development. I do not know why we have these standards in place, density laws or ordinances and facade and anti-monotony standards, and we lessen it every time. Why are we going against our own ordinances? We want to be a good city. We want to look like a nice city. They keep bringing up Naperville, Schaumburg, we have this. And look at those buildings and come here and make it cheap here. Joliet's the cheap place. No, I'm sorry, I am not for this project. And those reasons are why.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as written?
Clerk, I'd like to take 533-22 and vote on this separately.
So there would need to be a motion to approve the agenda as written with the following change. Remove Council Memo 533-22, which is award of contract for the 1801 West Jefferson Street Sidewalk Improvement Project to PT Farrell Construction in the amount of $183,290.31. Remove that from consent agenda to be voted on separately. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilman Clement?
Aye.
Councilman Guerrero?
Aye.
Councilman Hug?
Aye.
And Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin?
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillman?
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon?
Aye.
Motion carried. Next is citizens to be heard on agenda items. First is Ed Dollinger regarding Council Memo 545-22.
Well, good evening, everyone, and Mr. Mayor and council members. I normally don't show up here, so when I do show up, it's usually an important issue that I have a major concern about, and it is regarding the Rock Run crossings. And I appreciate Cullinan Properties and some of the amendments they've made and changes. They've been listening to different groups, so I do appreciate that. But I'm still concerned. I'm not sure when you have an apartment complex, how you can figure out how many students and kids are gonna live there over the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So I just have some quick prepared comments, and I'm just saying, Joliet, we can do better. And thank you, Councilman Quillman, for your comments. You know, this area at I-80 and 55, it's our western gateway to Joliet. You know, it's a crossroads of the upper Midwest. This development has the potential to be a destination place for people in the entire area. This development has many good components to it, but don't cheapen it by building apartments that will attract an element of crime that none of us want. Crime that flourishes on a busy intersection across the mid part of our country of 80 and 55. And also it's a potential burden to our school system. That was never in the original plan. This apartment complex reminds me of the development proposed a few miles to the north off of I-55 and Black Road 20 plus years ago. A developer out of Chicago proposed high-density vinyl-sided duplexes. Neighboring homeowners who were opposed to the project banded together, and now we have Wooded Creek, a beautiful place for people to live in Joliet. So let's take a step back and review the possibilities of a more adult living area of condos and townhomes near a beautiful casino development with all the other amenities they're talking about. But you got to put people there who can afford them. You know, the amenities of safe and active living area. You know, I know the studies showed that apartments are more marketable, but just what Councilwoman Quillman was saying, let's set the bar a little bit higher for Joliet. As I'm saying, you know, when you retire, you have to sort of move out of Joliet if you want a secure retired living community. You got to move to Shorewood, Romeoville, our neighboring communities, Naperville, what have you. So let's set the bar a little bit higher. And let's have an owner-occupied development of condos with townhomes, condos and townhomes. you know, the developer can still be successful, as we saw with Wooded Creek, and let's build something we can all be proud of for the long term. This is an opportunity to build an amazing living environment that is not available in Joliet currently for retired empty nesters or professionals. So I'm just saying, Joliet, we can do better. So please vote against this proposal the way it is currently. We can modify it and make it better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Go for it.
Good evening, council members. I'm one of the residents on Rock Run Drive. A few others are here tonight. We did have a meeting with Cullinan Properties a week and a half ago. We have some major concerns about adding 500 plus apartments in our front yards, essentially. I mean, we're a street without sidewalks, without street lights, and now we're gonna put 560 apartments that are presently in violation of your ordinance. I mean, you guys have density standards for a reason. There's safety concerns. Cullinan hasn't addressed any of that tonight. We brought that up at the meeting with them. They didn't address crime in high-density apartments. They didn't address them specifically in the city. They haven't addressed alternative uses. They've lowered the number of apartments to fit within what they told the city council years ago, I see under 600. However, you'll notice the third phase, they haven't committed not building apartments there. I directly asked them that question at the meeting. They took it off to have your vote here tonight, but there's been no commitment that they won't build further apartments on these properties or come back seeking more apartments. The burden on the school system it's a massive burden. 50 plus students with no tax revenue to support them. I don't know what the estimate of students are. Cost per student, I'm sure somebody here does. At $20,000 a student a year, it's over $1 million a year for 23 years. You're depriving the Troy School District of $23 million. An overburdened, overpopulated school system. And who's gonna pick up that tab? Citizens of Joliet and Shorewood, people on my street. I have a 2-year-old, he's gonna go to these schools. He's gonna not only live on a street with more people, this development's already bringing more cars down our road, that's a rural area, and that's gonna happen. But we can do better. We can put a retirement community there. We're not gonna overburden the school system. We're not gonna cause it to have to act without tax dollars. If Cullinan's committed and doesn't believe there's gonna be a lot of students, why don't they sign up a fund committing to donate money to the schools based upon the number of students in their apartments? You know, put your money where your mouth is, essentially. So I'd ask that you vote no on this as it's presently proposed. I think the city was wise when they put density standards in. I don't know when they were 36. I think the last time they were put at 18, according to the meeting, when I asked the question, was in the 1960s or 70s. So when they were in 36 was over 50, 60 years ago. We've seen what high density apartments have done in the city. They're not lowering crime. They're not creating better educational opportunities. We can do better as a city. And I think you guys should vote in support of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Drew McFarlane. I'm here representing thousands of taxpayers that don't seem to care about what this development could do to them. I wish they were all here tonight. By the way, thank you, the council and mayor, for allowing us to speak. My big word tonight is the number 23. 23 years of whatever the students happen to be in numbers that the junior college, the Joliet Township High Schools, and the Troy School District will have to pay for any students that utilize their schools, and there will be an unmandated funding for this. I think that the problem with this is that if Cullen really believed that there were going to be such a low number of students going to school, like the last gentleman said, they ought to stick a dollar amount that they'd be willing to pay to offset this. They haven't made any agreements that that if there were more students in that they would pick up the tab, or even for the amount of kids that are gonna come out of this project. This project should never have had residential in it to begin with. In other developments that the city council has done in the past that involved a TIF, especially, for example, by St. Joe's Hospital, they made a real effort not to have single-family dwellings or any kind of dwellings in that TIF so that the schools took a hit. In that particular area, if there had been subdivisions or whatever, that would have been strictly the city of Joliet school system that would have been affected. In this case, the people affected go all the way down to Pontiac. I talked to the assistant to the president of the junior college today, and she was very laxed on the idea that the amount of property tax that the college gets. She told me that most of it's tuition, and I looked it up, and I think they get $35 million from property tax. But the people from Pontiac even are affected because they have to come up with the extra money for any student that goes to the junior college, because the district runs all the way down to Pontiac and several other counties. And somebody for 23 years is gonna have to burden that, or take the burden of that cost of any student until this TIF is over with. No residential development should be in a TIF, because the TIF means that you're hoping to get the retail tax out of the project, which will offset the lack of property tax. And in this case, the schools need that property tax. They have a certain size pie that they deal with, and they're gonna have to cut the pie a different way to accommodate people that actually are not funded, that are going to the schools. And this is the problem. And I think you guys are real laxed if you vote for this tonight. We can't fight the original agreements you made with this TIF, the original maybe 270 apartments. But I think you can do something about the problem now to stop that density. And I think it ought to be done. It's very disheartening. But anyhow, thanks for your time. I appreciate this. And remember, if I had to wait 23 years for my Social Security check to come in, it'd be a long time. And most of the people in this room might be dead by the time a dollar comes to these schools from property tax, if you go for this. Most of us will be gone. 23 years is a long time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. My name is Paul Schrick. I'm the superintendent for Troy School District. Troy is eager to work with the city of Joliet and Cullinan Properties to educate the children that come from Rock Run Crossing development. We are committed to educating all the students that come from that development. This is what we do, and we do it well. We are interested in providing the education to those students that come from this development at the same level that we provide the education to the students we currently serve. Things such as low class size, exceptional academic and extracurricular opportunities. Ultimately, we are interested to learn what revenue the district can expect from the city or Cullinan Properties to provide that level of education that our taxpayers have come to expect. All right, and that relates to bricks and mortar. Should we have to build a school? This relates to teachers, staff, and additional personnel. This relates to the supplies necessary to educate those children. And we don't want this to be done on the backs of our current taxpayers, because we all understand that for 23 years, there will be little revenue to no revenue coming out of this TIF district for all of the students that come through and cross the threshold of our doors. So again, I ask, and this may not be the time to get the answer, but what is the level of revenue that we can expect as a school district to receive from the city of Joliet and Cullinan Properties to be made whole during this 23 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
May I, Mayor?
Yes.
Rick Joseph, I'm the attorney for Cullinan, and we appreciate all the comments from the individuals here this evening and the city council's attention to this. I'd just like to reiterate, there's not going to be 270 students. The school district here has indicated that they're looking for bricks and mortar. At the most, if you look at this, your own code, and Councilman Quillman said you have to follow your own code, we're not going to have more than 47 students at that location. Now, you know as well as I do that an increase of 50 students is not necessary. It's not necessary to build a new school for 50 students. The comments about bricks and mortar are not relevant to this discussion. And so respectfully, we disagree with the school district in terms of the number of students. Respectfully, we disagree that these are going to be cheap apartments. Respectfully, we submit that they're going to be very high-quality apartments geared towards young professionals and empty nesters who can afford the level of rent that these apartments will require. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council may have. Otherwise, thank you.
Yeah, you know, Rick, let's, we have an agenda to get through. When we get to your, before the vote, if there's any questions or comments, we'll take them then.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Next is council committee reports. First is Public Safety Committee report.
Public Safety met here in council chambers at 5:30. Officer Michelle Banis, Officer Charles Mascalino, Joe Clement, City Council, Chief Jeff Carey, the Fire Department, Jeff Price, Larry Hug, Councilman, myself, and the Chief of Police. So basically, we've already discussed what to discuss at Public Safety. It was the two issues on the agenda. It was the Operation Disrupt about the mental health problems and the suicide prevention plan that the police department wants to put in place, and then the future of the vehicles. And our city manager mentioned part of it. It was a long explanation at our meeting today. And Councilman Hug also had it at public service. So you want to give a brief summary of the issues with the vehicles, Larry?
You want me to do it now?
Yeah, go ahead, do now.
I'll be brief, and we'll have Greg Reddy coming behind if I miss anything. Let me summarize this.
Very detailed, so go ahead.
Over 60% of the police or policing-related automobile market is owned by Ford Motor Company. Ford Motor Company, the Interceptor, has been for some years the most popular. Ford Motor Company brought in over 20,000 more orders than they could produce. They could produce 33,000 roughly. Am I correct, Greg? Is that the number? That was their capacity, but they booked, I think, 54,000?
56,000.
56,000. So 23,000 cars had to be canceled. You know, we've all gone to restaurants where they overbook on purpose, and then you have to wait 3 hours, so this is kind of the same concept. So the cancellation was real. It affected 208 vehicles that were canceled for the Illinois State Police in Springfield. It affected cars being canceled from Naperville to Joliet to, they mentioned some other states. Do you remember any of the states right now, other cities?
We saw evidence from California. Jeff located an article. City of Chicago had 237 vehicles canceled. Lake County, Indiana, which is right across the border, another 26 vehicles, similar to us. But it was a nationwide issue. It is a nationwide issue.
Right. So that's kind of the summary, as detailed as it was earlier. We're part of the 23,000 that were summarily canceled because many of those cars are larger accounts like Homeland, the federal Homeland Security and outfits like that are buying hundreds or thousands of cars every year. Our staff, as my understanding, pled their case, and instead of losing all 25 cars they share, they did say that they would give us 15 interceptors, but we have to make up the deficit of 10, and it doesn't look good necessarily. It's too unpredictable especially with the police. And we have more cars than the police that are on order, and every department needs their automobiles, trucks, and cars to get the job done. They don't get the citizens' jobs done by sitting in an office, most of them. They're out there working, whether they're driving a truck or, but the police, the fire, that's gotta be number one. So doing some research, and I believe we can tip the hat to the city manager was involved in this process and had some connections to get some information. And it was judged that the Dodge Durango was the closest thing. We apparently looked at Chevy too, but it was only the large Chevy, what model is that?
The Chevy Tahoe.
The Tahoe, which is a huge, for policing. So apparently the dealers that have the Dodge Durango could fulfill the 10 we need this year and the 25 for next year, but they closed up, they needed a commitment by Friday. Again, the city manager and the staff talked to them and told them our story, and they agreed to hold it till Wednesday if we can find a creative way to give a guarantee, even pre-budget, for next year. I mean, we can guarantee the 10 now, because it's already in our budget, even if it means a slight budget amendment if the price had gone up. But the prices for the units are, give or take a couple of percent, basically the same.
Very close.
Right. So that's kind of the long and short of it. It really goes back to Ford Motor Company. And of course, we always use Ford Motor Company because the Interceptor was popular, but also many places, private businesses as well as municipalities and public organizations, try to stay with one manufacturer because there's all kinds of support that needs to be done. People think of parts, stocking parts, buying parts, yes, but it costs money to have access to their computer programs so that you can deal with the cars and reprogram new computers should a computer go out. So it's a little bit more complicated, but we don't have a choice. We need to do it now. We got assurances at the both committees, Councilwoman, that they would be able to stock the parts and get the technical support. We have to be sponsored to get the technical support, but we've been sponsored before, and our ordering 35 vehicles is going to make us sponsorable, if that's such a word. So that's the long and the short of what we're up against. It's a product of what is going on so much in this country now. People refer to the supplies chain, and they refer to other things, the chips, and it's really the perfect storm. And that's the long and the short of it. Did I miss anything?
No, it is a lot about the microchips and everything, but I just wanted to add also, these decisions were not made willy-nilly. The department head, Deputy Chiefs Brown and Matlock were also involved in the process of what car company to go to and what type of cars that they wanted to order, so it would be functional for the police department and for safety. So, having said all that, anything else?
Councilwoman, could you ask Greg just to make sure we didn't miss something?
Greg, didn't.
No, I think I have way more information that I don't think anybody's interested in hearing. I think Councilman Hud did a very good job.
Okay.
Explaining the.
Yeah, because it was a long presentation earlier.
Exactly.
Okay, all right, Greg, thank you. Councilman Clement, you want to add anything?
Oh, these are all-wheel drive vehicles.
Okay.
So we have not.
I guess I'm asking for the council for emergency authority to be able to do this. I believe that I have the authority under emergency circumstances, and this is because we got caught short on this. In terms of being able to go, them saying, hey, listen, we need an order right now. This is not the way I prefer to do business. So I'm asking, for the emergency authority to go ahead and commit to pick up the balance of those vehicles.
You sent an email to the council, right?
I did.
Is anyone
I
objecting?
did on Friday.
Question, Mayor?
Yes.
Larry maybe or Jan, are the Durangos all gonna be police vehicles? Are they gonna be
Yeah, please.
Yes.
only police?
Please, yes, sir.
With the next thing, certainly we got to take care of the emergency vehicles first, Councilman. But yeah, I was just about to say too, to follow up, and I believe staff is working on, we're trying to find some creative solutions to the back order or canceling of non-emergency vehicles, because those are just important. You're right, to each of the departments, Public Works, Public Utilities. So we are still working on that, correct, Jim?
We are still working on getting the public work vehicles, and the, I believe, fire department asked for some vehicles as well. So we're working on getting all of those put together.
And if you locate them and we find ourselves in the same pickle, you'll come back to us.
Exactly. Well, I'll put it in the budget, so I won't have to, come back unless it's something really crazy. But, the prices and inflation are going up, so a lot of unknowns right now, and we're just trying to, I'm asking for the flexibility to adopt, and move forward with this to make sure that our law enforcement, fire department, and water department have the emergency vehicles they need to respond to our citizens. So that's what I'm asking for here, for that authority here.
Did you remember we had a brief conversation
Yes.
this afternoon? Did you get that cleared up?
Yes, that's fine. Because it is an emergency circumstances, because they are demanding an answer, it's a yes or no. That is an emergency, falls under an emergency thing, which is something we wouldn't normally do. We'd have, I'm grateful that I was able to push them off to get this discussion in. But they are expecting an answer tomorrow. So, I want to answer them in the affirmative, and so that's what I'd like to do.
Does anyone have an objection?
Well, no, what I wanted to add to the meeting was, both of these were informational, and we didn't take a vote or anything, yay or nay, because we knew the severity of the issue because of the email and everything with the vehicles. So that concludes our report, because both of them were discussed here beforehand, so. It's an emergency, I say just do it, let's go with it, that's my thought.
Does anyone have an objection?
Well, I would just add, I don't, but what Jim and I had talked about earlier, and apparently, we had talked about it, can we legally make a commitment to a budget that's not been adopted without a levy behind it? But I believe that even if that were to be the case, hopefully we could take it out of the reserve. We have a healthy reserve, as Jim pointed out, and then replace it after we put the budget in. So we should be able to make the commitment, and I certainly back it, but I want to make sure we do it right.
Okay. Does anyone have an objection?
All right.
Thank
you very much. Thank you, Council. I appreciate it, and I appreciate your getting the gravity of the situation. So thank you very much, and thank you on behalf of the police, fire, and water departments. Thank you.
Next is Public Service Committee report.
Public service met today at 4 o'clock here in the council chambers. In attendance were myself and Councilman Morris. A large portion of our meeting we've just discussed, so we won't go over that again because we did have the presentation. We did discuss 2 contracts, both involving cars. There is a Ford Escape for the Department of Public Utilities, Councilman Muddern, so that means 1 car. It's not as many that we looked at and sent forward with a recommendation to approve. Like I said, it was a Ford Escape for $29,525.24. I'm sure we won't see that price next year. Then we looked at another purchase, which was a Ford Explorer for the new EMA director position, again from Ron Terrapelli Ford, and that was $45,000 for the Explorer. We have 4 items under change orders, pay estimates, and final payments. Nothing screaming for attention, pretty routine. We did have a credit back on one that made me chuckle because it was for $10.41. But anyhow, we looked at all 4 of the change orders, pay estimates, and final payments, found them to be completely in order, and both myself and Councilman Morris voted unanimously between ourselves to send it forward to you folks with a recommendation for approval. And let's see, we talked about the city purchases. That's pretty much it. We did have a brief discussion. We do need to replace, they've aged out completely, and you got to be safe with them. The underground fuel tanks we have both on Cedar Wood as well as over on Cass. And we did discuss what would be the route to go forward to put out requests for quotes and requests for qualifications and bids and so forth. And so they'll start that process because we do need to replace them. And it's got a really highly specialized field to be putting fuel tanks in and out. Other than that, that's all we have, Terry. Nothing. Covered it all?
If you did.
All right, then that would be it, Mayor. That would be my report.
Thank you.
I show no other reports. Moving on to consent agenda, approval of the minutes. It's recommended the minutes of the council meeting held on October 4th, 2022, the minutes of the pre-council meeting held on October 17th, 2022, and the minutes of the council meeting held on October 18th, 2022 stand approved as recorded. Council Memo 533-22 is removed from consent agenda to be voted on separately. Council Memo 534-22, award of contract for the West Side Wastewater Treatment Plant High Mass Lighting Upgrades Project to Elliott Electric in the amount of $34,420. Council Memo 535-22, award of contract for the off-sable clarifier Arbiter Pump Station Repaint Project to Era Valdivia Contractors in the amount of $298,000. Council Memo 536-22, award of contract for the acoustic pipeline inspection project to RJN Group in the amount of $38,750. Council Memo 537-22, award of contract to McGuire, Igleski and Associates for Phase 3 of the Downtown Joliet National Register Historic District Project. Council Memo 538-22, award of contract to Sierra ITS for information technology contract services in the amount of $45,000. Council Memo 539-22, authorization to approve the proposed renewal of group health, dental, vision, and life insurance program. Council Memo 540-22, change order number 1 for the 2022 blended phosphate purchase to Hawkins in the amount of $25,000. Council Memo 541-22, change order number 1 for the 2022 drinking water sodium hypochlorite chemical purchase to Hawkins in the amount of $100,000. Council Memo 542-22, change order number 1 for the water treatment plant residuals disposal project to Envirite of Illinois in the amount of $156,202.23. And amendment number 1 for construction engineering services to Duffield Consulting Engineers in the amount of $15,000. It's recommended Council Memos 534-22 through 542-22 be approved. Is there a motion to approve all consent agenda items?
Question, Mayor.
Yes.
This is what I was bringing up before, the historic designation. And it would make us, if we're gonna be doing that, it would make us eligible for tax credits and attract developers with specializing in historic buildings and safety codes and such. So we have no current plan, since we're not gonna use the original one, because it has to be more along the historic lines. So that's why I was wondering, how is that going to affect when we start doing our project? Is it gonna cost us more in the end? Or will we, in hindsight, be eligible for these tax credits?
Well, I believe this is just the first step in that whole process in determining this. I don't believe this is outcome determinative at this point. It's to hire the professional services.
That's all it's for. It's
Right,
not permanent.
it's not permanent.
I was unclear about that.
Right, so it's just the professional services contract to secure a preliminary determination of eligibility. So whether or not we're even eligible for this, and then we move forward from there.
Okay,
Sorry, Jim.
that's what I want to know.
Sorry about that.
Yes.
This is phase 3, just to complete the project.
Right.
Yeah.
But I
The
wanted to
money's
make
already set aside.
But I wanted to make, I know for that part, I'm talking about when the actual building starts. There are specifications and materials costs. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Well, and it's a good point, because there could be limitations on what we want to do.
Exactly.
Right, when we go down, as we move forward with the redoing the plaza downtown, there's some exciting designs there, and I certainly don't believe that we'd want to be hamstrung by, this, if this is the case. But at the same token, if we are able to get some buildings and put them on the historic register, and they're able to get funding for that at no cost to us, I mean, that there may be a plus. So I believe that it's important or critical that we get this study done, take a look at it, evaluate it, and make some decisions based on some information we get from there.
Mayor?
Yes.
Cesar Suarez is here tonight too, and while I was unable to make it to that particular meeting, because it was the third step and I had a business appointment, but Cesar and I did talk and discuss this. Cesar, if you might come up if it's okay, Mayor, because unless I misunderstood, Cesar, the participation in the historic district for building owners is voluntary and optional.
Yeah, that's correct. It's an honorary designation, and it's for the development of buildings. So if a developer wanted to build their building and get historical tax credit, they have the benefit by choice. They're not going to be forced or regulated to make their building according to a historical manner. It's really by choice. So it just gives you another tool in economic development to develop your building and get more equity and more money. It's not a it doesn't affect the streets, the streetscaping, or the plaza design. However, if you want something to be compatible or enhance the historical nature of the downtown, sure, you look at the plaza, you look at Chicago Street, you look at the streetscape and make it complementary to the buildings, historical or what have you. But that's a separate matter. So this particular is just honorary designation, number one. And number two, it's for the building and the developing the building for historical tax credits. It's not about the streetscape.
And to summarize it, Cesar, so what you're saying is it opens up, in addition to being honorary, it opens up the door to the opportunity for anybody that sees a financial advantage maybe through grants and what have you, by taking advantage of this, but they're not forced to.
That's right. It's just another tool that's by choice a developer can use to redevelop their building and raise additional funding in the form of equity.
Thank you. That's
Well,
all I
it
have.
didn't say honorary, so it's
Okay.
honorary. That's what, thought it was, once it's done, it's done. And then we have to abide by it. That's why I was asking the question. Okay, thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Is there a motion to approve all consent agenda items?
So moved.
Second.
In motion seconded to approve, Councilman Guerrero,
Aye.
Councilman Hug,
Aye.
Councilman Morris,
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman,
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon,
Aye.
Councilman Clement.
Aye.
Motion carried. Moving back to Council Memo 533-22, award of contract for the 1801 West Jefferson Street Sidewalk Improvement Project to PT Farrow Construction Company in the amount of $183,290.31. Staff is recommending this council memo be approved. Is there a motion to approve?
Question?
Yes,
So we, the city of Joliet, have someplace between 200 and 300 residents on the 50/50 program. That number has stayed current for the last 5 to 7 years, to my knowledge. Yes, this year, we have $750,000 monies going there. We, in the past, only had $250,000, and our budget going forward is at $300,000. We're never gonna get caught up. We, the city, have put black asphalt in a number of areas to protect people from tripping. But those areas, it was tree roots that are our responsibility. And based on what I've seen in the neighborhoods and the calls I've gotten, we haven't been able to repair any of that yet. Obviously, there was a serious problem with the gravel industry at the beginning of this year, and no one started going to work with the asphalt for quite a while, or for the concrete, I should say. Based on that, I don't see where we can give development that we already gave tax incentives of $3+ million, the money to repair the sidewalks. If they want them repaired, they should pay it or get in line with the rest of our residents.
Mayor,
With that, I can't vote on it.
may I?
yes.
May I address this? Well, this was part of the, Tony's came back and said, hey, they wanted a new sidewalk, and at that point, we said yes. It's clearly part of the development agreement. Jefferson Street, as you well know, is a place that needs economic development. When Olive Garden came and asked us for economic incentives, they were politely declined, because I don't need, I believe, to incentivize those businesses moving right off 55 and 30. This was a place that was been vacant. There were a lot of homeless people living there. This was part of the curb appeal for a brand new grocery store that is doing a fabulous job there. It's packed over the weekends. We're drawing people down to Jefferson Street. This is part of that. I believe that we need to continue to build on our successes. I agree that as part of the budget, I certainly agree with you 100%, Councilman Mudrin, that we need to do better on our sidewalks here throughout the city. There's a plan, I've talked about CDBG funding, to be able to use that money in economically depressed areas on the east side to put in brand new sidewalks. That's part of the funding, so we're trying to get to that. I believe that sidewalks are a critical part of folks wanting to, when you take care of when the city shows that it cares and they put in new sidewalks, you'll have a little bit more pride in your community. So I agree with you there that it's underfunded. And I would look forward to the budget talking about additional funding for 50/50, clearly to be able to catch up to that. We put in $7 million. We're going to put in, additional. We're putting in additional money. So it's just a question of how we want to redirect that. But this is part of the. This is clearly needed for to be able to get these folks down here. If you notice, and I commend the council for taking the bold step of passing the ordinance. You notice that there's been a decrease in the amount of homeless folks, panhandling. That's a direct result of your actions here. So we want to build on those successes. We want to have that corner really nice. That's some of the things as people come off of Larkin Avenue, off of I-80 directly into the city of Joliet, we want to be able to have a nice welcoming area, not a rundown sidewalk. So once we did that sidewalk, you notice that you had the White Castle start to put, they redid their facade as well. So I think it starts to build on that, and I want to continue that success. So I would hope here certainly that the council approves this. I believe it's critical to the continued success. So.
Mayor?
Yes.
Just to clarify, Councilman Money, you're right. For years, it was $250,000 a year with sidewalks. This year, it was $750,000. We all approved it, including you.
That's you.
We went up, and we'll cover that at the special budget meeting, because I see we went backwards a little bit down to $300,000. I want to move forward on that and the resurfacing. We did almost $12 million in resurfacing and sidewalks this year when you add in the motor fuel tax, MFT. And last year when we all discussed and when I presented my concept or a thought on this was to do 7 million plus sidewalks, and next year do 8 or 9 million. But that's for a later discussion as we hash out the budget. There was some confusion. Some might say we dropped the ball at the committee level, but there was some confusion. And I've heard several different things, Jim. Is this part of the ironclad development agreement? I do know they got $2.5 million in incentives from us for the development.
And they called up and said, hey, we're not willing to go forward at that point. And Derek Conley was here at that time. And so at that point, we said, yeah, as part of the agreement that we would do this if they would go forward, because they were getting really shaky on us there for a while. We weren't able to get them to move forward. If you notice, it was vacant there even though they had purchased it, they started to do some work and then they kind of just stopped work.
Was this part of the written agreement or was this a verbal agreement?
Councilman, I'm not about to speculate. I can't remember if that was or was not. I'm certainly not going to say yes and then come back and find out later on that's the case. But I can't speak to that. But I know that representations were made to them that we would pay for this sidewalk. I know that to be true.
Because I have to agree with Councilman Mudron too. And since then, what I found out is we do have a very structured residential 50-50 program, and everybody's held to the same standard. We really don't have that with commercial. And we need to have that before I can support something like this. However, if it's in the written agreement, well, then we're legally obligated. I need to know that for sure too.
Councilman Hogg, have you walked those sidewalks? They're not that bad.
Yeah.
I know Mr. Clement has done it well. I mean,
Yeah,
the neighborhoods have worse sidewalks.
Yeah, Jan, I went there Sunday. Jim, if it's in the agreement, then we have to do that.
But we don't know that.
We don't know, so I don't know how they move forward here. I 100% agree. Great addition to the neighborhood. I shop there, great addition. And I agree with Councilman Mudron as well. And what do the neighbors say? They're paying 50-50, and then we're gonna spend 180-something thousand here. And then another question I have, is that state property? Or who's obligated to maintain that?
The roadway is Jefferson Street itself is state property. So
Is the sidewalk ours, or?
The sidewalk would be ours.
I would think at this point, we kind of need to know if it's in the agreement, right?
I would agree.
Would you consider tabling it until we get that information?
I think I can make that motion.
So we can move on.
Did you make a motion to table?
Yes.
I'll second it. And if you can until he brings back the information.
Fair enough.
Motion seconded to table Council Memo 533-22, which is award of contract for the 1801 West Jefferson Street Sidewalk Improvements Project, PT Farrow Construction, in the amount of $183,290.31. Councilman Hug?
Aye.
Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Mudron?
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman?
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon?
Aye.
Councilman Clement?
Aye.
Councilman Guerrero?
Aye.
Motion carried. 533-22 is tabled.
We'd have to table the first ordinance too, correct? That's a budget amendment for that purpose.
Correct.
I would make a motion to table 544-22.
A second.
Been motion seconded to table Council Memo 544-22, an ordinance amending the 2022 annual budget for the 1801 West Jefferson Street Sidewalk Improvement Project. Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Mudron?
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman?
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon?
Aye.
Councilman Clement?
Aye.
Councilman Guerrero?
Aye.
Councilman Hug?
Aye.
Motion carried. Council Memo 544-22 is tabled. Moving on to Council Memo 545-22, and ordinances associated with the preliminary planned unit development for Rock Run Crossings multifamily subdivision. This includes an ordinance approving a special use permit to allow a multifamily use in a B2 central business zoning district located east of Rock Run Crossings Drive and Gateway Boulevard, and an ordinance approving the preliminary planned unit development for Rock Run Crossings multifamily subdivision. It's recommended said ordinances be adopted.
Krista, I had a question. One thing that was addressed, we've had a private meeting, obviously, with Troy Schools, but the issue of funding, and I don't think it was referenced, maybe I missed it, but what comes through the TIF or from the state of Illinois per student, if someone could address that from Cullinan?
Okay, go ahead. I also have, Mr. Singh is also able to address that as well.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
So the TIF statute actually requires that the city set aside a certain percent of funds to go to the school district to fund students coming out of the TIF. So the TIF statute for elementary districts, which include K through 8th grade, is 27% of the TIF revenues generated by TIF-supported residential. So based on the value of 570 units, roughly almost $462,000 is what would be set aside from TIF revenues to fund the school, what the statute calls a per student capital cost or tuition cost. So school districts have, a cost of education. They also have tuition costs for out-of-district students. So the statute allows for, actually requires that the city, when the school submits for the number of students that come in, that we cut them a check for basically that amount of money that the statute provides, which is the district's actual cost, not a number from a study or anything like that. So based on 39 students, annually, the school would get roughly, anywhere from about, between the city through the TIF and state aid, roughly about $450,000 a year.
Question, Mayor.
Yes.
Kevin, did I understand you correctly? And so the actual cost to educate, and this, they would get 27% of that actual cost?
Yeah, I'm gonna say yes and no. So yes, their calculated tuition cost. There's also another number that the school districts have, which is an operating expense per pupil. So their tuition cost is almost, or just shy of $12,000 for 21. So if a student happened this year, the statute says we have to use the prior year. So if it was a student this year, their tuition charge was just short of $12,000. Their operating expenses per student was $13,200. So now out of the tuition, you also have a state aid amount. So their state aid, if you take their total state aid divided by the number of students, it's roughly 2,000. So roughly that they would get between the state and the city anywhere from 11 to 13,000.
Sorry.
And this will be based on the actual number of students?
Yes, they actually, the statute requires them to actually, within a time frame, apply to the city for that reimbursement.
So no matter what the number ends up being, it's per student?
Yeah.
Okay.
However, as long as it's under the max, which based on the amount of money that, actually I tried to verify it myself and feel comfortable with the valuation of the units, as long as the 27% number is less than or more than their reimbursement, they would get reimbursed for all of the students. So.
Yes.
Okay, as I was listening to all this, I was making some notes, and I'm going to ask, why? Why do we want to lower our standards now? We've set the bar. Let's make Joliet the city it should be and could be. Developers came here, and they come here because we lower our standards. We have these ordinances in place, but yet we go, okay, come here, we'll change this, we'll do that, blah, blah, blah. We're cheapening our standards. Until recently, we didn't even have a single-family rental ordinance, and that goes in place on January 1st. People from out of town, Bolingbrook, Naperville, Romeoville, I can go on, came here and ran their single-family rental business out of Joliet, made hand-over-fist money because we had no inspections. And when asked, why do you come here? Why do you have it where you live? Do you live in Bolingbrook? You live in Naperville? Do you have your business there? Well, no, because we have an ordinance for inspections. So it took a very, very long time for us to get this passed, and thank goodness this council finally did that. So we're raising our standards, so why lower them now with cheap-looking apartments when we have these other ordinances in place? Stone and brick, that's our ordinance. Density, 10 units per acre, or per unit acre, not 17, 18. And these students, okay, in 10, 15 years from now, they're going to live in a crowded apartment complex. There's not going to be any place for them to play. There's no parks. They're going to pave off the park. Where are these kids going to play? Where are they going to go down the road? We have to look to the future, not just right now. We have to take care of business. And this council has made great strides. Please, don't lower your standards now. I'm asking you to deny this or vote against it until things get changed.
Yeah, I got one more question for Kevin. Kevin, maybe I'm slow tonight. So they get 27% of what, according to the state?
So, according to the state, 27% of the taxes from the residential, we have to set aside separately.
Of the property
We have
tax?
to reserve for them to be able to apply for reimbursement of the actual kids that come out of the subdivision that go to that
Of the
school.
total property tax?
Yes.
On that building, so to
Or
speak?
the residential, yes.
Okay. And normally, 60 to 65% goes to the school district, am I correct?
I believe that's accurate, yes.
All right, so they're getting about between 1/3 and a half is what the law requires.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a motion to approve Council Memo 545-22 ordinances associated with the preliminary plan unit development for Rock Run Crossings multifamily subdivision?
So moved.
Second.
Been motion seconded to approve. Councilman Mudrin?
The Cullerton Rock Run project has been here for a number of years. Obviously, COVID made it step back for a while. We've seen other pieces of their projects in other towns and other areas. Whatever they said they are going to do as of now, they have done. For an example, we do have a full interchange there being built or being completed at 55. I believe they are a good developer. I believe in what they've told us, and I vote yes.
Councilwoman Coleman?
This corner is prime real estate. Years ago, there was gonna be the Bridgetown Mall, and then the economy went bust. We held on to that property. Then a Ross Perot wanted to come in and put all warehouses in there. I fought that, and this council at the time voted against it. We held on to the property, and we waited until finally the developers on that particular property sold it. The interchange did come in, but again, I just do not think that these apartments are the right place for that to be. We need a senior citizen complex so people don't have to leave Joliet. They want to stay in Joliet. They want a nice place to live, but we have nothing like that here. They have to go to Naperville. They have to go to Bolingbrook. They have to go to Shorewood, where all these Del Webbs are, if you will, just to name one. So again, I ask this council to, let's go with our new standards. Let's bring Joliet to what it should be. It's called the City of Champions, so let's take our part and make this the City of Champions by abiding by our ordinances instead of crowding everything in to appeal a developer. No disrespect. I've told you folks all along how I felt about this. So this is no surprise to you, and I already told you I'm not going to support this. So my vote is no.
Councilwoman Reardon?
I will say that when the third phase came about, I was very put off, and I let you know that I was. I don't like that feeling of, oh, this is what we agreed to, and now you're wanting to do this. But I do believe there are a need for apartments that are nicely done, high-end, high cost to rent, and the majority are either studio or one bedroom. I do believe that a lot of seniors and older people, I shouldn't say just seniors, up in their 50s or 60s, don't want to take care of a home, don't want to have property taxes anymore. They want to rent, they want to go, they want to maybe have another place in some other town where they can just be bopping between the two. I think there is a real need for rental. I really do. And so when, we had our discussion, we decided to go back to the phase 2, which is what we originally spoke about. I feel like I can support it, so I vote aye.
Councilman Clement?
Gotta vote aye.
Councilman Guerrero?
Aye.
Councilman Hug?
And I do have concerns for the Troy School District. And thank you, Kevin, for breaking it down. So they're getting approximately 1/3 of what they normally would get. Under the formula, generally speaking, 27%. But more so, our density ordinance was created, and I remember the process. We went through it and we debated it quite a bit, 2011, 2012. And I believe it was finalized in 2012. And I also remember the original conversations with Cullinan dating to May, I believe it was May 18th of 2015. And certainly there's going to be apartments in there. It's always been a mixed use, but there was never any request or insinuation that we would have to go, double our density. And, I do believe in law and order. I believe in our ordinance, and I believe 10 units. We didn't do that haphazardly. We spent this, the council, some of the members are still here. We spent quite some time investigating, talking to consultants, and came to 10. And that density is just too much for me, so I vote no.
Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Motion carried 5-2. Next is Council Memo 546-22, an ordinance amending Chapter 6, Section 22 of the Code of Ordinances. It's recommended said ordinance be adopted.
Motion to approve.
Second.
In motion seconded to approve, Councilwoman Quillman.
Why bother? Why bother? No.
Councilwoman Reardon.
Aye.
Councilman Clement.
Yeah, I believe this was the dog running at large, right? I'm voting aye.
Yes.
Who's gonna enforce it?
Councilman Guerrero.
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-1. Next is Council Memo 547-22, an ordinance declaring certain properties as public nuisances. It's recommended said ordinance be adopted.
So moved.
Second.
In motion seconded to approve, Councilwoman Reardon.
Aye.
Councilman Clement.
Aye.
Councilman Guerrero.
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman.
Since this one is going to actually be enforced, I will vote aye.
Moving under resolutions, Council Memo 549-22, a resolution approving an honorary street name, Lieutenant George Hernandez Way for Collins Street between Irving Street and Ward Avenue. It's recommended said resolution be adopted.
Motion to approve.
Second.
In motion seconded to approve, Councilman Clement.
Aye.
Councilman Guerrero.
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman.
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon.
Aye.
Motion carried. Council Memo 550-22, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with the Village of Shorewood for water metering and billing. It's recommended said resolution be adopted.
So moved.
Second.
In motion seconded to approve, Councilman Guerrero.
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman.
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon.
Aye.
Councilman Clement.
Aye.
Motion carried. Council Memo 551-22, a resolution approving an amendment to the professional services agreement for the historic resource survey of the St. John's neighborhood with McGuire and Gillespie Associates. It's recommended said resolution be adopted.
So moved.
Second.
In motion and seconded to approve, Councilman Hug.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman.
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon.
Aye.
Councilman Clement.
Aye.
Councilman Guerrero.
Aye.
Motion carried. Council Memo 552-22, a resolution approving and authorizing execution of an assignment of agreement for purchase and sale of real property for purposes of constructing the Olympic Boulevard extension. It's recommended said resolution be adopted.
So moved.
Second.
Been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin?
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillman?
No.
Councilwoman Reardon?
Aye.
Councilman Clement?
Aye.
Councilman Guerrero?
Aye.
Hug.
Aye.
Motion carried, 6-1. Next is the city manager's report.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank everybody today for your, your patience and your support. So, and with that, that will conclude my remarks. Thank you.
New business after final action or recommendation?
Joe? Caesar?
No.
Larry? No. Terry? Pat? Jim?
Nope.
Sherry? Nothing.
Next is public comments. Is there anyone that would like to speak under public comments this evening? Approach the podium.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Jacob Darley, principal at Forest Park IE School in District 86. Hoping to end your evening on a good note. I have two pieces of good news that I'd like to share with you. Forest Park IE School is one of the two magnet schools in District 86. I've been the principal there for 13 years and I'm a product of the school. Our school was recently named as a National School of Character in 2020. This year we're pushing out an initiative that I want you to be aware of around town, and if you'll give me a second, I'll just read a letter that I'm sending out to all businesses and organizations in town. We are a school of character. We want to spread that message to the community. And so our initiative is called the Community Committed to Character. So we're sending letters out to local organizations, and we say, we want to partner with you, with local organizations, to highlight how character education guides everyday decisions, practices, and behavior. Our goal is that our students, K through 5, building of about 300 students, and the public see that good character can be applied in all aspects of life. Being honest, being responsible, being empathetic can be useful both at school, at a business, at a store, at home, at church, practically everywhere. Our small K through 5 school of less than 300 students has been recently named at the state and national level as an esteemed school of character. In short, I want you to be aware of, as you're around town, you may see signs like this that will indicate that the business or organization is committed to character just like we are. We want the kids to see what they're learning at school can be applied at their local grocery store as well. We are in several businesses right now. Our first couple partners are the Supermercado Don Jose on Ruby Street, the Joliet Public Library, the Sunshine Cafe on Scott Street, Nico's Pizza on Ohio Street, and the Joliet Historical Museum. So as you're about town, if you see these, think of us.
Thank you, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Jim, can we help promote this on our website?
Sure, I think we could do something there.
Very good.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
One more piece of news. Our school was approached by, of all people, Montel Williams, if you remember him from the 90s. He's still on TV on a show called The Balancing Act, and they came to our school and did a 4.5-minute spot on us, and we're going to be on WPWR this Saturday and next Saturday at 11 a.m. So if you have a chance, tune in.
Very good.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak under public comments this evening? Seeing none, next is mayor and council comments.
Joe?
I'd just like to wish my daughter Carson, she's gonna be 10 on the 5th, and I just wanna wish her a happy birthday. So, thank you.
Caesar?
Sure. So I don't always dress up like a dandy, but the marigold or cempasúchil is the traditional flower for Day of the Dead, which is today really a 3-day holiday, beginning yesterday and tomorrow. But I just hope that everyone here takes a moment tonight to just remember our friends and family who are, as we say, se nos adelantaron en el camino, which just means they're not gone, but they are a little bit further up on the path. So especially I think in the wake of a number of instances of violent crime that have been happening throughout the city, and the 1-year anniversary, very, very tragic shooting that happened last Halloween. Hopefully we can take a moment to remember those and really Day of the Dead, despite its name, is more than anything a celebration of life. So I hope we all take a moment to remember the departed and also appreciate those of us who are still here. So that's it.
Larry?
I have nothing.
Terry?
Nothing.
Pat?
Just want to congratulate Glenwood Manor. The mayor and I were in their local parade. That's been going on for 20-plus years, and they do a great job of getting all the kids out. Congratulations.
Jan?
All I can say is just remember who lowered Joliet's standards.
Sherry?
Well, I'd like to say my baby and Joe's baby share the same birthday, only mine is going to be 25. So happy birthday to them both.
Very good. A couple things. The Guardian Angels had a ceremony on October 19th celebrating their 125th anniversary. Krista, we need to do a proclamation to get them in front of the council. They've been a great part of this community for a long time, so congratulations to them. On October 20th, Take Back the Night had their annual event. It was at Hufford School. It's good to see that back online after being canceled because of COVID. On October 21st, I was invited to Farragut School. I was the principal of the day, and I worked with the principal, Joy Hopkins, throughout the morning. Terrific staff and students over at Farragut. They're doing a great job, again, like all our local schools, so thank you to them. October 29th, with last Saturday, there was a Graves Boxing Fighting Change Amateur Boxing event. Councilman Morris, I know you put me in touch with them, but it was great to see, again, young people doing something positive. Again, October 30th, as Councilman Budgeon mentioned, there was the Glenwood Manor Halloween Parade, which is a great annual event in one of the neighborhoods here in Joliet. And then finally, I was invited to, but I couldn't go to a birthday party for Nancy Petracco, so I want to wish her a happy birthday. And with that, that's all I have tonight. No executive session?
No. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
No executive session?
Is a motion and second to adjourn? All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I was curious. You gotta